Hello friends, in this video you will learn when are planets really conjunct, what really happens in a planetary conjunction, why Hamas attacked Israel on 7th October 2023, and how to read planetary conjunctions in your natal chart. So let's get started. First we will discuss when are planets really conjunct. Now I have created this slide with a scenario. So we have Venus that is still in Aries, and we have Jupiter who is in Taurus around 5 degrees. Now, as you can see, between Aries and Taurus, I have created this line that is a wall, and I have created a dotted line on both sides of this wall. The dotted line spans around 1 degree. The reason why I have set it at 1 degree is because when a planet reaches exactly within this 1 degree, it starts to experience the energy of the zodiac sign on the other side of the line. The reason why I have created this opaque line is because the planet cannot see what is on the other side. It can only sense the energy. And that is why when a planet reaches this last degree of a house, it starts to show a little bit of results as if it were in the next house. So that's the reason why I've created this line, just to show you what happens when a planet is about to cross into another zodiac sign. So coming back to planetary conjunctions. So now Venus travels from Aries into Taurus. So first it comes into this influence space. It starts to sense what is on the other side, but it cannot see. And then it moves on to the other side. And as soon as it comes here, now it can see Jupiter is over here. So from the moment it can see Jupiter, it starts to transmit its energy onto Jupiter. So as it is traveling towards Jupiter, Jupiter starts to sense or starts to absorb the energy of Venus. Except that because Jupiter is looking forward, it doesn't know who is coming from behind. Now we do know planetary aspects. So a planet can have multiple aspects. Jupiter, as we know, it will look at your fifth house, seventh house, and ninth house. But no planet can actually look into the second house, and no planet can look into the 12th house either. So basically, they look forward. So as Venus is coming towards Jupiter, Venus is influencing Jupiter, but Jupiter has no way of influencing Venus. But as soon as Venus touches this 1 degree sphere, which is the influence zone of Jupiter, it starts to absorb the energy of Jupiter. Now, from this point onwards, Jupiter is able to transmit its energy into Venus. And basically, I call this a planetary conjunction. Because while Venus was here, Venus was able to influence Jupiter, but Jupiter was not able to influence Venus. It's only when it entered the influence zone is when Jupiter was also able to influence Venus. So basically, when multiple planets are in the same zodiac sign, they can be together in the zodiac sign, and one planet can influence the other. So when we are looking at these planets in this sequence, you have Venus stronger than Jupiter because Venus can influence Jupiter, but Jupiter cannot influence Venus. But when they are together, so in this zone, they both are influencing each other. And then as Venus travels onto this side and gets out, by this time, Venus actually starts to display more of Jupiter's energy than its own energy. Because now Jupiter has been able to completely influence Venus during the conjunction, but not only that, as Venus is going forward, now Jupiter is able to transmit its energy onto Venus, but Venus is unable to influence Jupiter, right? So the conjunction zone is only this 1 degree zone, right? So when two planets are within this 1 degree of each other, they are conjunct. Okay, now let's move on to the next item. What really happens in a planetary conjunction? I guess we may have already touched on to it in the previous slide, which is basically when planets are conjunct, they need to be within the same degree. Only then they are conjunct, which is what we established in the previous slide. Now, what actually happens during planetary conjunction? Now, the moment two planets become conjunct, the planet that was behind earlier starts to take on the characteristics of the planet that it is about to cross. And in this moment, you actually start to see more of the result of the planet that is being transited. So basically, you can say that Venus has disappeared the moment it came here, and which is why you see it is going behind. So now all you have is Jupiter. And then it starts to come out. So it is showing its result again, except that now it is showing, you can say this way, so it's showing more of Jupiter and less of Venus. So basically, during conjunction, you see the planet almost disappears, it loses its ability, and when it comes out, it's only retained part of its abilities. And this continues until it transits another planet. So, for example, after crossing Jupiter, if it were to come into the sun, then eventually it will absorb the energy of the sun and then it will start to display the energy of the sun as it comes out of there. And not only that, when it is coming towards the sun, because it already had Jupiter's energy, it would influence Jupiter with the sun's energy as well. So basically, that's what happens during a planetary conjunction. But we will discuss this in more detail when we discuss the fourth item. So now let's move on to the next item, which is why Hamas attacked Israel on 7th October 2023. So what was happening in October 2023? Now we know that Ketu was transiting Libra, and in October it was about to transit into Virgo. Now Mars, on the other hand, had been in Virgo and in October entered Libra. Now we have already discussed earlier the influence zone, where a planet can sense the energy on the other side but cannot see. And as soon as it crosses the opaque line, now it can see the planet on the other side. Now, the interesting thing about Ketu and Rahu is that they travel in the opposite direction. So as soon as Mars entered Libra, Ketu could already see Mars and Mars could see Ketu. So both of them already started influencing each other. So I would assume that Hamas started planning their attack the moment Mars and Ketu set their eyes on each other. Now, why Hamas and why not anyone else? I will create another video on this, so planets and races. So for this particular video, Ketu represents terrorism, freedom fighting, going against the government. So that is Ketu. And as we know, if we consider the Western world as being governing the world, such as the United States, United Nations, etc., then we know that the Middle East, or you have countries like Iran, they are always against it because they want to have their own way of life. So K2 basically represents individuals like Osama bin Laden, organizations like ISIS, as well as organizations like Hamas and any other terrorist organization. Now, when Mars entered Libra, and as you know, Mars is a soldier, obeys orders, and has a lot of energy. Now, when both of them started looking at each other and they started influencing each other, Hamas started assuming that they were an organization made up of soldiers, and so they carried out a coordinated attack that would appear as if it was a military attack. So, as soon as Mars entered the influence zone of Ketu, the attack started. So until then, it was all planning. And then as soon as it entered here, they were like, okay, get all the balls rolling. And the attack occurred. So Mars started to disappear, and then you had K2. And as you know, Hamas killed a lot of Israeli soldiers. And then as Mars got out of the influence, Israel retaliated, and the war is still ongoing. Now you would say, why Ketu or Hamas attacked Israel, not any other nation? Now, as we know, Libra is ruled by Venus. the Jews or Israel, they are represented by Venus. And Venus and Ketu, they don't get along with each other. They will never get along with each other. So as you can see, Ketu was in Libra, it was building up. As soon as Ketu entered Libra, they had already started preparing for an assault on Israel. But as soon as Mars entered Libra, it gave them the confidence to carry out the attack. And hence the attack occurred on the 7th of October. All right. I hope this makes sense. Now let's move on to the next item, which is the final item: how to read planetary conjunction in your own natal chart. So here I have created a scenario, right? So we've got Mercury still in Gemini, and then we've got Mars, Venus, and Jupiter in Cancer. So as you can see, Mercury has already entered the influence zone. So it is able to sense the energy of Cancer, but it is not able to see the planets on the other side. Now, inside Cancer, we have Mars, Venus, and then we have Jupiter at the forefront. So as we can see, I've created this eye, so we can see the direction in which they are looking. So Mars is influencing Venus, and Venus is influencing Jupiter. But what you can see is, even though Mars is influencing Venus, Venus is not able to influence Mars because Mars has not entered the influence zone of Venus. Now, I should have drawn the influence zone of Mars as well. But what I have noticed is that it's only when the planet touches 1 degree. So you can say half degree each, because like if you're looking at a chart, when the gap between two planets is 1 degree is when the influence starts. So if I were to create another influence zone for Mars, then I would have to make it half degree for Mars and half degree for Venus, so that when both the half degrees add up to 1 degree, then they influence each other. But just for simplicity, I've created it this way. So because Mars is not within 1 degree of Venus, Mars is able to influence Venus, but Venus is not able to influence Mars. But on this side, as you can see, Venus has entered the influence zone of Jupiter because the gap between Venus and Jupiter is less than 1 degree. So Venus is now starting to behave slightly like Jupiter because the energy of Jupiter is being absorbed by Venus. So now you can say this position, it's like half Venus, or maybe say 75% Venus and 25% Jupiter at this point. And then it is also being influenced by Mars. So you can imagine how Venus is going to behave if you have this kind of combination in your chart. So in the sign of Cancer, basically, we have 3 planets that are together, but only 2 planets are conjunct, right? So basically over here, as Venus crosses, it will start to behave like Jupiter, but it hasn't crossed fully yet. And birth chart or your natal chart is a stamp of the skies at the point of your birth. So when you're looking at your birth chart at a conjunction or planets in the same house, you have to look at the degrees between them. So in this scenario, what we see is Mars is the strongest planet because it is at the back. It can influence both Venus and Jupiter without being affected. So it is the strongest planet. Then Venus is supposed to be the second most strongest planet, but because it is in the influence zone of Jupiter, Jupiter is able to influence Venus. And depending on the sign, so who is more comfortable in this sign, how close they are to each other, and other factors would determine how much Jupiter has been able to convert Venus into itself. So based on that, you will be able to determine between these 2 planets who is now stronger. So this is how you read planetary conjunctions in your natal chart. Now, if, for example, you had all 3 planets like this, so you have Jupiter influencing Venus, you have Venus influencing Mars. Now, when something like this happens, the strongest planet would become Jupiter because it will be able to influence Venus, and then from there it will be able to transfer energy into Mars. When the individual is born, so basically this is your natal chart, and as soon as they are born, they will notice changes in their life, because these planets will move ahead of Jupiter in the first few months of their birth. They will notice that their life has a lot of influence from Jupiter. All right. So I hope this has made sense. So in this video, you learned when are planets really conjunct, what really happens in a planetary conjunction, why Hamas attacked Israel on 7th October 2023, and how to read planetary conjunctions in your natal chart. Until the next video, thank you.